Roundup. Our guests this week are David Rennie, Beijing Bureau Chief for The Economist. Here in Washington, D.C., we have Jennifer Williams, co-host of the podcast Worldly, that's produced by Fox, where she's senior foreign editor, and Larry Modolo, North America correspondent for the BBC. Well, COVID has now taken the lives of more than 1.6 million people worldwide. One of the lives lost this week was the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. Ambrose Dlamini is the first world leader to die of the virus. David, what do we know about his death?
Well, he's been ill for quite a while. He was in hospital in South Africa, and he's pretty young, as you say. He's 52 years old, and when he tested positive for coronavirus in the middle of November, he said he didn't have symptoms, that he was feeling well, but then at the beginning of December, the government of Eswatini, which is an absolute monarchy, but it does have a prime minister and ministers, said that he'd been moved to a hospital in South Africa to help him recover fast. But then on Sunday they said that he in fact died in South Africa. So this is clearly, we've had former leaders like the former president of France, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, who died of complications, but this is the first leader to die in office.
And when we look at the global picture of COVID infections, what is it looking like? Well, I'm going to zoom in on some specific areas in a moment, but what are we seeing globally?
Well, Africa is an interesting example because obviously people were very worried when the virus first hit Africa because it doesn't have great hospitals in every country, but it's actually done in some ways better than other continents, and there are various theories about that. One simple fact is that about 60% of the African population is under 25, and just everywhere in the world, young people seem to do better. A lot of people live outdoors. That's something we've seen scientists say is potentially helping in Africa. But actually, there have been some what looked like the start of a really nasty second wave in places like South Africa, where a lot of young people seem to have celebrated the end of school exams, and that's led to a real tick-up in cases. And so there's real concern. But clearly, the countries that we've been looking at a lot in Europe, Britain, France, a whole bunch of countries are really suffering as they go into the winter, hoping that they can keep this just under the level of kind of their health care capacity before the vaccines start really rolling out in the new year.
Well, David mentions France. We know French President Emmanuel Macron tested positive for COVID this week. Jennifer, how is he doing?
It seems he's doing fairly well as far as we can tell. You may remember when British Prime Minister Boris Johnson also tested positive at the very beginning. Of that, the government kind of line was that he was doing great, and then all of a sudden, he's in the ICU. So as far as we know, Macron is doing okay. He is experiencing symptoms. That's basically how they found out that he was sick and was tested and tested positive. He seems to be continuing to hold, virtual meetings and things like that, trying to present, the government is still working, everything is fine, nobody panic. The problem, beyond the fact that he has it, is that in the past week, he has had in-person meetings with numerous European leaders and officials, to the point that so many people are now having to quarantine. It is a truly kind of staggering how many people, there was an EU summit last week. At that time, the leader of Croatia, leader of Estonia didn't attend because they were either sick or were quarantining. And now we have, with Macron, he met with all kinds of different leaders. And so what's really concerning beyond just the situation in France is that this could now potentially spread and impact leaders across Europe. And remember, this comes at a time when, not only is the EU trying to work out, a major vaccination rollout, but also, in the midst of negotiations on Brexit between the UK and EU, and Macron is very much, involved in that, in the sense of, there are lots of issues surrounding fisheries that France is very much involved in. So this comes at a really critical time, and it just, the idea that he was meeting in person with so many people is just kind of staggering. Yes, they probably wore masks. There are some photos showing them, all wearing masks. But at the same time, at one point, he's in the room with someone for hours and hours in a small room. So, I think it really goes to show in some ways how much it still is really difficult to even do the basic kind of functions of diplomacy and international governance when you're trying to meet with leaders. This is something that's very important. But, guys, you need to keep it on Zoom for a while. I'm sorry.
Well,